the misfit.
Hey everybody, my name is Jamie Balcom. I actually am from the great state of Michigan. I live in Iowa now. I have been doing ministry for a long time, many years of youth and sports, and a couple years ago I took a break. And so I grew up in the Reformed Church of America, a small little town called Conklin, Michigan, maybe a population of a couple hundred people. And I came to faith really early on. I knew God was calling me at a very young age, at like 6, 7 years old. And throughout the years, I would fight him and say, no, I don't want to do anything for you and do ministry because I always thought my friends made fun of me, so I didn't do it until I was older. And then when I got older and was doing youth ministry, God won, and I went back to school and got my degree in youth and sports ministry, and that's where I am. And the last couple of years, I've taken a few years off to do a hiatus and do some new stuff, and I'm beginning to look at what it looks like to start a new ministry and called the Feed the Flock, or Feed His Flock, and me and Andrew will talk about that more in a few minutes.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We are trying to stay consistent and do every week. We've got schedule changes coming up, so hopefully that's going to be happening. But today, we have a guest that has been a long time coming because he was one of the first people. I don't even know if you remember this, Jamie, or not. He originally was one that we had looked at co-hosting before we even launched.
I do remember.
And then he was going to be doing his own thing for a while, and then that didn't pan out either. But he's finally here. We had recorded it. Those that followed us here from the CSRM Podcast back, many years ago we started. He and I had recorded together a couple of times for the CSRM Podcast. But now we're finally able to do it for the Misfits Podcast. So, Jamie Balcom, welcome.
Hey, buddy. Glad to be here.
Yes. So, it's been a long time coming. We finally have you here. Let's start out with a little bit of why it's been a long time coming in terms of how you and I actually know each other and what it is that we've been trying to get going for a while here. So, who is Jamie?
Yeah, it's been a transition for me in life the last couple of years. All the years of doing ministry and sports ministry, I took a break. I needed time away from doing ministry, and now it's like, okay, God's been pulling and he's fighting, and it's like, okay, and then my boy Andrew reached out to me, so I'm like, okay, God, this is what it is, and let's get going. So I'm in. So here we are right now.
So I'm the one that's pushing. No goody.
That's good.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Jamie is a former CSRM Board Member.
Yeah.
He is one that he and I. So I don't know how long we've actually known each other now because I don't remember how long I've been involved with CSRM, but we've known each other for a while. He and I have been both involved in multiple plannings of things. And unfortunately, he and I also are two of the type. I mean, there's a reason why he was going to be able to fit right in with the Misfits moniker right away. Both of us have a tendency to want to vision cast. It's part of the giftings that we've been given. Both of us also have a tendency to not necessarily fit the mold of the people that want to hear a vision casted to them. Would that be a correct way of saying it?
That's the exact great way of saying it.
Yeah. So we've run into a few roadblocks here and there, but Jamie now is coming because he is ready to start casting a new vision, and one that is in early planning stages, but it's far enough along that we want him to come and talk and see what can be done to help move that process along. And we're going to get to that here in a little bit. But first I want to talk about something else that we've hinted at before in other episodes, but this is one of the times where we actually have a guest that I know is going to be able to actually break this down a little bit easier. Let's talk a little bit about this whole needing to take a break but not being allowed to type of situation. going on, because this is something that, anybody that has listened to us for a while has heard me say, is that there is no such thing as part-time ministry. And there is also no such thing as actually being able to retire from it.
That's correct.
And so I just actually had this discussion with a guy online the other day that he's like, I'm done doing church stuff. I'm ready to go look for another job. How easy is this going to be? And a lot of the other people in this group were like, oh, it's just a matter of changing your resume and things like that. And I'm like, well, no, dude. You don't understand what's about to happen here. Because you're going to go find another job and just be like, what is happening? Why are people thinking the way they're thinking? Why are people doing what they're doing? This is not how we're supposed to be treating people. And he kind of knew what I was talking about, but not quite. Everybody else in the group was just looking at me funny. Let's actually walk through this whole thing a little bit before we get into how we got to where we're at today and what we're going to talk about for the rest of the time. So, Jamie, you talked about the fact that you just needed a break for a little bit. Walk us through that process of recognizing it and then actually acting upon it. What was the process there?
It's just, like I said, I had been doing it for 26 years, 26 years. I moved out to Iowa to take on a job to do youth and sports, to continue it with a good friend of mine who's the senior pastor of the church I worked at. And, and there's always them issues that people they don't like certain topics, youth ministry. I literally moved into a small town where things don't happen. Our kids don't do that. That kind of stuff doesn't happen here. You shouldn't talk about them controversial topics with our kids and just different stuff and just issues, the issues aren't even the kids, the students, it's the parents. More and more the parents I've done it for 26 years. I was a paramedic in there. So there was no topic off limits for me. There was nothing I had never seen before. And it just got to that point where okay, I just need a break. I'm burned out. People have accused me of stuff that's never happened. They always do that. It's part of ministry. And I finally just I need to take a break. I need to step away from ministry. And I literally walked away from the church. I took 6 months before I even stepped back into church again. It was right after COVID. I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not going back into a church. I don't want to go. I was very angry at things that have gone down, but also part of it was I need to separate myself and go to church again where it wasn't a job. Church is church now, and we began to go to this new church and 3 years ago, and the senior pastor ended up being my cousin out here in Iowa. My third cousin, didn't realize it till he said where he was from in a sermon. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm related to him. And my wife's like, no way. I'm like, dude, he's my cousin. He sure is. And then we started going, we've been going there for about 6 months and 7 months that time. And Tim, the pastor's like, hey, I want you to go down a mission trip to Compton. I know what you're doing. I know you're trying to just be a number. They're really cool about the people of the church. They knew who I was. It's a neighboring town, so they knew who I was. But the staff understood. And we get to California, and Tim's like, Jamie, I can't have you be just a number in our church. He's like, you're too valuable to me and what to do stuff. And I'm like, Tim, I'm just not ready. And I was like, okay, let's start doing a little bit. So I went out, did the mission trip. That's the start for me. I was trying to avoid that stuff. And then about a year and a half ago, he was like, okay, or last year I took on a new job working with one of my good friends from church. He does construction, which I did a long time ago in the summer when I wasn't farming. And my boss just decided, he's like, hey, you gotta stop pushing, you gotta stop fighting, and then all of a sudden my boss tells me, hey, I'm going to go become a missionary in a year and a half. So they're in this process now. And I'm like, okay, God. And he's been like, Jimmy, you got to stop being angry with God. I wasn't really angry because I was. And Tim finally put me, Jimmy, you got to let the anger go. It wasn't anger necessarily with God, but the church too, and just anger. And so last year I started teaching middle schoolers again. I forgot, after a 5-year hiatus, I'm like, what the heck is this? And I forgot how crazy middle schoolers are. And
it's a completely different generation now than when you left. Yeah.
Right. So I started helping because I didn't want to step on our youth pastor's feet, that we have. And I was like, hey, I'll help. And so I started, and I've been on 3 or 4 mission trips to Compton, which will lead to where I'm going in next, and we'll talk about that with the idea in a few minutes. But it's just that transition of like, I just needed to stop. I needed to step away, focused on my kids, and just did that. And now I'm in a place again where I'm like, okay, God, like we're having this constant dialogue, me and God, every day of arguing and not arguing. Well, I argue. Instead of listen half time, I just argue with what he's trying to tell me. And it's getting to that point where I'm like, okay, if this is what you want, then let's figure this out. In a year, and like literally a year from now, I won't have a job. And so it's like, okay, do I transition? And I'm getting that like, okay, I feel like I've had my break. I've separated. Okay, do I want to work in a church or do I want to do this other thing? And that's where we're at today. It's just a process. Like people need to understand, like you can get burned out quickly doing ministry. Yeah. But how do you recognize that is the hard part.
And that's part of what I wanted to get to is how do we recognize that? Because I think there are a couple things you said that we need to break down a little bit, because this is where the confusion comes in a lot of the time. Is one of the things you said was that part of why you just needed out was that there was just nonsense going on, is the best way to put it. There was nonsense going on. There were accusations being thrown around. There were rumors being spread. There were people that were upset because you were actually talking to their kids. All these sort of things going on. And that's why you're like, okay, I'm done.
Right. Because
we're not doing this anymore.
I look at youth ministry totally different now that I've been youth ministry is more of counseling now. You're more of a counselor than you are anything else. So, the leadership and the teachings need to come from the home. We're just there as a person to walk alongside your parents, but also these kids need a place to vent, open up, and if you had to, like my rule was because I was a paramedic, I've seen it all. My rule with the kids were you have 24 hours. You tell me something. And if you're either hurting yourself or harming yourself or others, you have 24 hours to go tell your parents. But the thing is, like most other youth pastors, like I'm the first one, like I will walk with you through this process. I will stand there as you tell your parents. I will sit in that meeting. I will get them to understand what's going on, and then you get to some of the parents like, my kids don't do that. And then the minute their kids do it, they don't want to believe it. And it's like, then they're like, oh, you're counseling my kid through this. Well, what are they doing? Well, part of it is they have to tell you, I give them the time, and then it just continues on and just trying to understand what's going on. But also there's parents that don't want to hear
it. And that's part of where my next question was going with is, do you feel like, because contrast that with what you just talked about as far as both with your boss and the pastor that you have now, of where you said the things that was time. They wanted to give you time. Mm-hmm. They wanted to allow you a chance to do it. Very much, actually, they're doing exactly what you said you were trying to do with the youth kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they want you to be able to do it. And do you feel like part of the difference between what you are ready to go do now and why you walked away, 5 years ago, is an easier way to kind of define it would be is the support level of the network, mm-hmm. more so than it is actually the job.
Yeah, that too. That's a lot part of it too. And like, as you say that, the support level, but it's allowed me to I'll show you, it'll be part of when I tell you what's going on, what I've been doing the last 5 years here when we get to that. But it's like, I've been allowed to because I was angry with God over the whole thing. I'm like, okay, dude, I've been doing this for 26 years. At what point? Plus, I'm like, I'm a dinosaur in youth ministry. I did it for 26 years, holy cow. And then I'm like, but then now as I started this spring, I started helping the middle schoolers. I'm like, okay, this is who I am. This is who God's made me to be. There's no doubt about that. Okay, yeah. I mean, I was nervous at first diving back in because they gave me all the brainiac kids, all the smart ones. And I just went right after them and challenged them. And I was like, oh, and this year they're already like, we only want Jamie to teach us. We don't want anybody else teaching us. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm all in again for a year. And it's like, but I'm in a good place to go in and do it. I have the support, all the kids in my group, I know their parents really well now. And, it's just that I'm to that point. I'm like, okay, God, let's go.
And first off, we need to point out that people are going to look at the screen now and be like, how had he been in for 26 years and calling himself a dinosaur?
Working with teenagers, you say young. Yes, I am almost 50 years old, but I attribute to working with kids all the time.
That and the food you're eating, which we'll get to in a little bit. that sort of yeah. People don't believe it, and here's part of the other thing that people also need to understand as we move through with all this, because they're probably all like, you said he was a builder and he's just doing basic youth ministry stuff. Go back and we'll link it. You should listen to some of the episodes that he and I recorded with the CSRM podcast stuff. This guy was building wiffleball fields out of nothing, and doing full leagues every summer. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like he was just sitting around doing youth ministry. He was, which is that, and you can't just sit around and do youth ministry. Don't take that the wrong way. I'm saying it was much more than just he was doing youth ministry. Right. Now, the other thing involved with all of this that we're getting to is that, the other phrase that you used a couple of times here, and this is one that gets misused and misunderstood a lot of the time by people especially people that have been hurt by the church from a ministry role, but have never actually served in that role themselves to actually know what we mean when we say this. So the phrase that you used and that your pastor had used is mad at God. You're saying, yes, I was mad at God.
Absolutely.
What does that actually mean?
I didn't know where things were going. I was struggling with okay, what's up? And why is this happening? Why am I going through this again? Or why am I going through this? And then, it's all what am I doing? What am I doing? And then who do you take it out on? There's nobody there to take it out on. Once you leave, you take it out on God. And, it's kind of like when, I don't know if this is the best way to put it. It's like when somebody dies, except there's still a person. It's that ending. It's that closure. There's a closure without a closure. There was never closure. I still see I still see students I used to work with, and they're still calling me all the time to talk to them. So there's no end, but also it's just it's just okay, God, I don't know what you want. What do you want? And the waiting times where you get frustrated. Okay, God, what do you want? Do I want to do that? What do you want me to do? Where am I? Because in that transition point, I'm I don't know what I'm going to do. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I have a family to take care of, and just the waiting. I'm not a waiter. So that's where the frustration comes in for me, is just okay, what do you want? What are we doing? Let's go. I'm not waiting. That's a constant argument I have with him all the time, because I'm not a sit still guy. I don't want to wait. I'm let's go. What's next? You talk about, we're visionary people. Okay, what's next?
And that's what, before we even get to what's next, the flip side of that is what you also had said related to it, in terms of the fact that you're saying, I was mad at the church, but I was also mad at God. And that's where the problem comes in for a lot of people, is that you either hear from one extreme, you're mad at the church, so you shouldn't be mad at God because God is so good, so you just need to find a different church.
Right. That wasn't it for me.
Or on the flip side, you have the other extreme of, well, if you're mad at the church, then you need to just be done with the church and go away from it and be mad at God, because the church is God, and so that's right. The problem.
No, that wasn't.
Neither of those things are where we're at with what we're talking about here, and that's right. Part of why I wanted you to be the one to help me walk through it, because this is part of what
it's.
I don't know if how much attention you've paid, because you've been very busy. A lot of the audience that we have within Misfits are people that are in that exact spot of where they have left the church due to something.
Right.
But they don't want to leave God behind.
Right.
And so they are saying, yes, I'm mad at the church. I'm not mad at God. Other people are telling them, though, no, you're mad at God and you need to just love the church.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that most of us are actually in a different spot completely, where the anger is being directed at God for the way that the people that were supposed to represent him acted.
Mm-hmm.
So, how have you walked through navigating that? Because we've said it on here before, and we'll make it very clear again. We're not saying it's a problem to be angry with God.
No, it's not a problem. But you know what? God's bigger than all of us.
And that's the next step, is recognizing who God is. So walk us through your process, and this is something we're also going to make it very clear as well. This is going to look different for everybody.
I had to separate myself. I mean, I was angry, and I didn't want to take it out on my wife and kids, but I've always known in my heart, God's bigger than all of us. And I always, as a kid, my my mom would always be like, if you're mad at God, go outside and scream at him. Go out in the middle of the field and just start screaming at him. And I used to actually do that. I physically would do that. And I did that out here after it was all said and done. I went out and just went for a walk where I hunt in the farm I hunt and just unloaded, like, okay, you're God. Okay, God, you're bigger than all of us. Okay, I'm going to unload on you. But yeah, yes, I'm upset with you, but I still love you. I mean, we all have a savior, that there's called forgiveness and grace. And, and it's trying to remember what God's grace looks like in the anger. And I've gotten past it. I mean, yes, there were days it finally took Tim to be like, Jimmy, you got to let it go. Let the anger go. Just stop being angry and just let it go. And we were in California on our third trip there. He's like, he's like, just let it go. And he just started praying. He's like, I want to pray with you. You're my brother. Let's pray. And that was the turning point. Like, so now it's not even anger at God anymore. It's the discussion for the last year. Okay, God, what do you want? It's not even an anger anymore. It's like,
it's frustration.
The frustration of waiting on, and it's like, it's all in His time. Oh my gosh, if I hear that again, I'm like,
add that to the list of things not to tell people that are dealing with stuff.
Right. It's a matter of finally letting go and understanding that it's not a God issue. You're not mad at God. You're mad at the situation, but we're all sinful people. It's part of it. It's a sinful world, and we have to come to terms with knowing in the end where we're going.
And so that's where we're going now, is that you've walked through that whole process. You've dealt with the burnout. You took the time you needed. You got frustrated with the fact that you felt like you weren't getting the time you needed. And then after you realized you had the time you needed, then you were frustrated that it wasn't happening fast enough. And now we're towards the middle of that stage.
Mm-hmm.
What has happened? Because the guy that has created multiple fields across the country and multiple other events suddenly reawoke.
Yep.
And what has happened here?
You mean in general? It's just okay. I finally was like, it took my buddy, my Reed, who's my boss, like, Jimmy, you got to it's time. And me and him we have a lot of hard conversations because he's going to become a missionary in the other side of the world, and I'm like the church guy who's like, dude, do you know what you're getting yourself into? He's like, yeah, do you know what you're getting yourself into? And just deep conversations about that. And it's that point of, okay, being quiet and listening to God, just like Reed's trying to do right now. And he's amongst everybody. What are you doing? Why are you leaving? Blah, blah, blah. And, and I'm there like, dude, you're going. God's called you. You got to go. And he looks at me because he's been like, I don't know. They're like, I don't know. And everybody's like, they're going to be missionaries. So their families are like, no, we don't want you to go. And I'm like, And then I'm like, I literally said to him, like, dude, God's called you to go. You're going to go. And he goes, are you calling the kettle black right now? Because God's calling you again to do ministry again. And you're not listening either. I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. Yep. You're right. You're so right, buddy. And, which has led to deep, deep conversations. And, it's kind of the transition where I am now. And I feel God is calling me more and more after this last year, especially this last summer. And so, yeah, we're to that place of me and him are both like, okay, we've got to listen to God, but we also have to have that support group of each other. Like, okay, like, what are you going to do? What's next? And I've been asking him like the hard questions, you're going to go to a place where you're going to be like an outsider, and just that kind of stuff. And it's just like that whole transition of like both at the same time, like, okay, if you're going to listen, I have to listen, because I was always like, oh, you're the one going. And every day is like, Jamie, remember, I'm leaving. So you got to do something else. You might as well just do what God wants you to do, because it's the best way for you there is. He goes, you are a ministry person. Get your butt back into ministry kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, I'll stop fighting it. And like, it just took hearing that from a friend who I trust, and I work for him, but me and him are very close friends. Before I even went to work for him, he was like, our friendship is foremost and more than anything. And it's like, okay, let's go. I'm in. I'm listening.
And so now let's actually look at what this call is.
All right. So,
because this is where the fun part is going to be. So for a little background before we even get there, for those that have not gone in and looked at who Jamie Balcom is and what he was looking to do, you need to go back and look at the CSRM episodes that are linked. But the original plan going back 5 years ago was that part of what Jamie was hoping to be able to do was teach people how to actually cook meat well.
Yeah. That's right.
Hold that in the back of your head.
Yeah.
As he starts this process of explaining what the vision is that God has now given him. So fire away, Jamie.
So back then me and you were in the conversation starting a podcast about hunting, fishing, barbecuing, and a little bit of Jesus. And that's what it was going to be. And I just, especially it was more of the hunting than anything. And then, but barbecuing, because everybody needs to learn how to cook, and barbecuing is huge. And there's not much out there other than the Duck Dynasty guys, with hunting and Jesus. And so I remember that. And the point was with you was like, yeah, I want to do that. And then just a whole bunch of stuff fell off the rail and it just couldn't happen. And as I sit here right now thinking, as I'm watching your face on my computer, it's like, okay, God, here's that whole part of God's timing. Like, he closed that door at that time. And now, was it 5 years later? Here we're sitting right now having this conversation. So it's kind of crazy, but no. So when I moved to Lamar's, where I'm at now, my wife actually won the Traeger X at the city yearly expo. She won the Traeger grill they were giving away. And I was like, all right, let's learn how to start smoking stuff. And this is 8 years ago, 9 years ago now, almost 8. And I was like, and I started learning how to cook and taking the time. And there's a guy in my town who's a very famous barbecue guy. He has at the time had 15 different internet shows. He was on every night, and I went to church with him, became good friends. We still are. He's like my barbecue mentor. And now he's like we do crazy stuff all the time now. And so it became a thing. And then we went to California in Compton. And the guys we were staying with, the church, they had what was called a pit maker trailer. I don't know, some of you will know who Pit My Grill guys are from TV. They had one of their custom made trailers. And while we were in Compton, I'm like, man, I want to do this. I want to do this more. I want to learn how to cater. I wish I could have a trailer like yours. And I'm like, what does that trailer cost? Like $20,000. I'm like, oh my gosh, 20 grand. I'm like, I ain't got 20 grand. So as we're out there, this is where God came in again, and all of a sudden I was like, I got a phone call. So a little back farther, my dad died of Agent Orange from Vietnam, after he retired. And all of a sudden I got a phone call, and it's this government number. And I'm like, I don't recognize this number. But anyway, the government decided, because my dad died of Agent Orange, they want to pay me and my brother off. They want to give us money. So I'm like, okay. And then the amount was astronomical. Like, not astronomical. It was a lot more than what I ever dreamed of, because we were like, it's only like $200.
It's astronomical for any of us that have been working in ministry for a long time.
Astronomical. And all of a sudden I'm like, holy crap. And they told my brother, said, did you open the check? I'm like, no, I'm in California. And he's like, well, you might want to have Stacy open it and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what is it? He tells me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I literally looked, I was with Reed and our friend Riley. I go, I guess I'm going to a barbecue truck, because I just got told how much money I made. I'm getting paid off by the government. Might as well. My dad loved to cook and loved how I cook. So I'm like, I might as well honor him. And so I bought a pit maker barbecue trailer, which I have today, and I did cater. I've been doing catering on the side, learning how to just barbecue everything there is. I've created a community. I've been in a barbecue community right now. I'm in with some of it's crazy. Like Kent, who my buddy here, Daddy Dutch Barbecue, has with all these show guys. I have met some of the most famous barbecue people in the country just because of Kent. And so that's what I've been doing, is just on the side. I just cater, and right now I'm catering on the side, building houses, catering, and getting ready to do some youth group ministry again. But yeah, which is going to lead into what's next. And I truly believe it's what God has called me to do. And that's where this conversation is coming into place. So this summer, to make it easy, this summer we've had out here in Northwest Iowa, I know a lot of people know, we've had some massive flooding, just absolutely massive flooding. We've had multiple tornadoes that have never been around this area. So we had a tornado hit, a 5 tornado hit about 2 hours south of us in Harlan. And I called a bunch of my friends from church. I'm like, hey, let's go. I'll hook up the trailer. The trailer's hooked up. Let's hit Sam's Club. Let's go down. Let's feed people. So we went down to Harlan where the F5 tornado hit. We parked. We started cooking, and it really hit us. Like, as we were driving in, Stacy just starts bawling. My wife, I'm like, what are you doing? We got to feed people. You can't cry. She's like, but the devastation is. We took all our families, so all the little ones. We had my little girl, both my daughters with us that are 7 and 4, and they want us, and they're with us, and like 4 families, and we just started feeding people. And as I'm talking to one of the cops, a gentleman walked up, an older gentleman. He's like, I need you. He goes to the cop, looks at him, he goes, thank you so much for feeding us. We appreciate this. And he literally looks at the cop and goes, hey, when you're done hanging out here, can you drive to my neighbors like 2 miles down the road and tell them to give me my machine sheds back? Because I saw my combines in their field and one of my sheds is by their house. And we're talking, this is like a mile and a half away from where they originally were. And I was like, wow. And then we had a riot doing that. We were doing it. We were feeding people. And then few months later, then we had the giant flood, the August 26th flood. It was insane. We went up north to the city where it hit hardest, one of them. As we were leaving town, I said to Stace, we are not going to get back into Lamar tonight because the flood waters are coming up. And as we were driving up to Orange City, where we go to get everybody and plan stuff, the flood, we saw the surge wave in the river next to our town coming down. I'm like, we're not getting back into town tonight. But we ended up going way south to get back. We ended up getting home that night. But we went up north, and then but that week was like, Sarah, our mission instructor, is like, Jamie, we've got to go feed people. I'm like, okay, well, like 400 or 500 people. That's what we've done a couple times now with the tornado. So I'm like, yeah. And she calls me that night. She's like, how about let's plan for like 4,000 people. Can you pull off a meal for 4,000 people? And I was like, you find me an army and a semi. She's like, what? I'm like, we need a semi. And we went down to Sam's Club, me and Reed and one other. We took one of the students and we got a semi full of food. We brought it up to church on a Thursday night, and I said, all right, we need an army. We had like 80 people come up. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to get people in place. That next morning, we drove up to Rock Valley, and our group alone served 5,500 meals in one day. And I just got the itch. I'm like, okay, God, is this what you have for me? Is this where we're going? And I have fallen in love with the disaster relief stuff. So I am looking to start an actual disaster relief business. That is my next thing, is to do complete disaster relief.
So before we get into what the plan is, I want you to talk one more area of this, and that is you describe the itch. Walk us through what the itch is, because I know what it is. Some of our listeners will know what it is, but I want you to describe it, and then I'm going to throw up the wording we typically use for the itch.
For me, it was the moment that farmer was like, this guy just lost everything he owns. And he had such a sense of humor. He was laughing. He's like, man, I appreciate you guys feeding us. We prayed with that man right on the spot. But also was like, he literally said, you know what? I am 87 years old. I lost everything, but I serve a God who is bigger than all of us, and he will take care of me. And that moment right there, I was like, oh my gosh, we are here because God called us here to feed these people. It wasn't me going, oh, let's go feed them. It was God putting it on my heart. Jamie, to hook up that barbecue trailer. You already have. You have it. Get your butt down and grab some families, call it. And the exact people I called it, everybody went. And I was like, one of them might not. They were like, one of them had a wedding. They dropped going to their wedding. The other ones had a family reunion. And they're like, no, we're going with you. This is bigger than us, our families. And we went down. We served people. We served like 500 meals that night. And it was just that point of like, okay, I love doing this. It's that point of serving and just being able to pray with people, being able to just give them a hot meal. Then we were doing the flooding. As we were doing the flooding relief, people were walking up that hadn't showered in 5 days. We were giving them hot meals. Just a smile on their face. We were able to pray with them. We were able to just like, hey, let's talk about how can we support you. And our church has been a huge backing for me and with this idea. But the itch is when you stand there and see people in total loss and you're like, I can help them for that moment. And introduce, and it's not even feeding them food. It's feeding them a little bit of Jesus. Hey, can I pray for you? Can I take a minute and I just want to pray for you. I don't want to push God on. I'm not going to Bible thump you, as people say. That's not my job right now. My job is I want to get a warm meal in your belly, and let's just take a moment real quick. I just want to pray for you if that's okay.
And the wording we use for that is this is the holy discontent stuff.
Yes, sir. My favorite two words.
A feeling of this Paul, to borrow Paul's phrase, the woe to me if I don't.
Mm-hmm.
With Paul, it was just straight preach the gospel.
Right.
For you specifically, a decade ago, it was wiffleball and baseball cards. And now it is shifted to the same love, the same need to provide. It is just now shifted in the format.
Right.
And this is part of the other reason that we're talking to you is that and I think you would agree with me. You can disagree if you want, but I think you probably would agree with me that the same call and discontent that you had a decade ago doing sports and youth ministry in Michigan, it is still the same heart and call that you are now having as you walk into now switch over into feed his flock. Would that be accurate?
That's absolutely, it's the same thing. So
Well,
yeah, it's the same. There's no doubt.
and again, this is part of what I keep saying this a bunch, but it's because this is also somewhat of the OVRadio type of special sort of thing where we're going to be sending this off to CSRM to use as well. But it is somewhat again of a misunderstanding, misidea for people that have never dealt with this stuff from an actual ministry perspective, of the idea of the fact that if you are called into ministry, that you're called into specific roles and only specific roles. And if you're going to switch, then God's got to call you into that. That's not how it actually works. God calls people to specific people, not to specific areas of ministry.
Right.
And, so for me, it has always been a marginalized community. Most of the time that has looked as inner city, but not always, because for a while it was in an extremely rural area to the people that were forgotten about in the rural areas. You have always been called to the people that just needed a voice, somebody that was willing to talk to them and sit with them and work with them where they were at. Now let's get into a little bit of how you plan on doing that now. So you already kind of talked a little bit about
we've already kind of we started it. That's the crazy thing, without really even knowing what we were doing. When I was told I got to come up with a meal to feed thousands of people, I was like, this is insane. There's no way I can do this by myself. And I called some people, and I'm like, one of my friends, Riley, who go to church with me, he runs the armory here in Lamar's, and he goes to church with us. And I'm like, hey, I need you to be Riley for a day and a half while we go up here. And he was literally my field general. Like, he was like, you do this, and it was awesome because I could focus on getting everything around. But yeah, the idea for me going forward is to start literally a disaster relief ministry, but not one like, there's all the big ones like Mercy Chef, Samaritan's Purse. They go to the big towns. For me, coming from small town, little town Conklin, that's where I want to be. Nobody's going to go to the small town in America that gets hit by a tornado. The little towns, like they go to the big ones. Like we had like Samaritan's Purse and Mercy Chef went to Rock Valley because it's a central point for a bunch of big cities. Me, I want to go to the tiny little towns that are population, 300, 400 people for a few days. And we're going to feed them. We're going to serve them. And that's where it's going to start. Is I want to be the one that goes to the little towns.
So you've got the food, you've got the giant truck, you've got not truck, you've got the trailer, not the truck. You've got the food down, but then you also have a little bit of another advantage in the fact that you just spent the past 5 years working in construction as well. You also have the ministry background. You've also got the sports ministry background. Which, when I say that for people that are not part of the CSRM network, they're like, that's the same thing. No, it's not. The sports ministry background and the ministry background are two completely different things. And we might even get into why that is here a little bit. But walk us through what you're wanting this to look like in terms of you just said you're going to the small towns. You're hoping to pull in. You're hoping to feed the people there. You're hoping to be able to also feed the workers there. What, beyond the food, what is it that you're looking to actually do?
So as of right now, I'm working on like creating the 501c3. We're starting the process to raise funds to help do it more. But like, everybody's like, well, what's your vision? And my vision is, it's like literally it's all of John chapter 21, the whole thing, but especially the one verse, John chapter 21, verse 9 is where they're coming in off the water with this boat full of fish, and there's Jesus, and he's standing on the sideline, and it literally says Jesus lit the charcoal to feed the people. And when you're in the barbecue world, that's a big deal. You light your charcoal to feed people. And and it's that idea of like, here, I want to go in to where the people are, and we're going to light the charcoal and we're going to feed them. We're going to take the time to feed them. But I have learned though that to do this correctly, because I don't want to go in and do it only partially. We're doing this, we're going to do it right. And so there's a lot of stuff that's got to happen in place. Like I need to come up with funds. Like I found out with 501c3, you have to have your business plans in place, what you're going to do. But first and foremost is I need a bigger trailer. So I've already reached out to Pitmaker. They've sent me the blueprints to build a new trailer that's like mine on steroids, because I want to be able to go in at one time. If I can feed 500 to 1,000 people in one meal, let's feed 500 to 1,000 people right now, per meal. And then what else do we need? The different equipment we need. But it's just like, it's not even necessarily feeding the people the food. It's feeding them who Jesus is. Like I said, like, I want to be able to go in there. We're going to come in. We're going to feed you. We're going to love you. We're going to pray for you. We're going to do that kind of stuff. But also, like, that's just the first phase. My plan is like 4 phases deep with this whole ministry idea. But also, like you said, my background is sports ministry. Why can't we go in while we're feeding them? Let's bring some soccer ball. For me, let's build them a Wiffleball stadium every time we go in. It doesn't cost nothing. Give them a place of hope. Give them a place of, okay, we've just lost everything, but give them a place where they can come together as a community and help them do that process, like to grieve together, but also create a space where, like, hey, we can come together as a community. We can still have fun in our biggest loss, and just what is that like? Just for right now, for me, I'm in that phase of like, what does this transitioning look like? How do I get everybody? What do I got to do? Who's the right people to get in on my team to do it? And I mean, it's begun. We've done it. We've already started this summer. We've already been feeding people, but now I want to do it full scale. Like, here we go. We're going to travel. What's our distance? Like, how far are we going to drive? I don't care if the tornado hits and God says I got to go to, that one place south of the border of Michigan, that town, that state you're in. We're going to come. Oh, did I say that out loud? Them feed them Buckeyes, but I don't want there to be a limit on where we go. If it's a tornado, if it's a flood, if it's an earthquake, if somebody says, Jamie, can you come here to our town? If we can do it, we're going to go. Okay, team, we got 2 days. Let's go. Let's get there. We're going to get there in 2 days. We're going to spend 3 or 4 days or a week or a week and a half, whatever it takes to help get this, to feed them and get this town at least at a place where they're like, okay, we can grow, we can come together, we can at least get some food in their bellies for a few days, and then who knows where we go next. We either, you come back and get ready for the next one. But a lot of that is like just conversations I've had with people like, okay, this is what I need. But then I'm like, no, this is not what I need. It's huge. It's a humongous, because I was like, oh, I can get grants. But then I talked to, so in my town where I live now, the lady who runs the Red Cross in the 5-state region lives in my town. And she's like, what do you look for? I'm like, well, I was thinking like a couple $100,000 just to get started. She's like, a couple $100,000, you ain't gonna do nothing with that. She's like, you need a couple million to $2 to $10 million to start. I'm like, where am I going to find I work in ministry my whole life. Where am I going to find $2 to $10 million? And she's like, don't you have faith in God? And I'm like, you're right. Can't put God in a box. Can't limit God, And so that's where I'm at, is getting to the point now, like, okay, I need to start raising the funds, because by next summer, I don't have a job, but also I do have, this is what God's calling. I know it. And it's like, all right, how do we set this up, transition into feeding his flock?
So before we get into what you need from people now, I want us to backtrack a little bit into what you were just talking about, because I think it's an interesting thing, and we're going to shout out Greg Linville now, because he's going to come up a few times here in this discussion.
Here we go.
Whether you knew it or not.
I figured it would.
I find it interesting that you feed his flock. You said it's coming out of John 21.
Yeah, because I can't do feed the sheep because somebody's already done that one.
Well, yes, but we're not even going into copyright laws now. You got enough 501c3 stuff to mess with. We're dealing with but the thing that I found interesting was when you said, there's one verse in John 21 that we're focusing on. The verse out of John 21 you're focusing on is not feed my sheep.
No, it's
the
not.
Verse that you're focused on is the idea of lighting the charcoal, which is part of what, the concern that comes up when you hear sometimes when people are starting these types of ministries is the fact that they're going to come in, they're going to throw a meal at people, try to shove the Bible down the throat first, then feed them, and then they leave and everything, and they're still in disaster mode. We've talked about this is why CSRM doesn't like the idea of non-indigenous missionaries and things like that, because you go in, you do this stuff, and then you leave the town with nothing.
Right.
But you are coming at it from a little bit of a different perspective here. The idea of you're just going to light the charcoal and then let God do what he's going to do.
Right. I'm there to feed people and pray. That's it. We're not Bible thumping.
And this is where I think the fun part is, because I don't know if you are recognizing it or not, but because you've been out of the CSRM loop a little bit longer, is that we're back to the 5 Bs. Of this whole thing is a model of what the 5 Bs are supposed to look like, because Jamie is very clearly pointing out the fact that the call that he has right now is to come in and make people feel like they belong again, not to make anybody actually believe anything.
Right.
The goal ultimately is that people will, but that is not the mission that you are set out with. The mission you are set out is to light the charcoal.
Right. Plant the seed, be the beacon.
And I think that is something that needs to be highlighted in this discussion, especially with people in my audience, because we've all experienced, unfortunately, the effects that the church can have when we have it backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Of we're going to go into a disaster area, we're going to go into a trauma-filled area or a trauma-filled discussion and just say, well, all we need to do is preach the gospel, without recognizing what that actually looks like. In the case of John 21, the gospel message was, we light the charcoal, we let the disciples come up, and then only after that, and Peter's ready, do we actually talk repentance.
Mm-hmm.
That is what Jesus models in John 21, and that's ideally what we're going to be seeing out of Feed His Flock here in the future. The other thing that we need to highlight, because people are still probably like, what in the world are they talking about? Let's sidetrack for a second. Just indulge me, and I know you gladly will indulge me on this discussion because you never get tired of it. What are you talking about with the Wiffleball stadiums? Because you just said, yeah. The goal is to leave every town with one also after you feed them. So what is this? Because people are very confused, and I know they are.
So we all know back in the day, Wiffleball was my way. I totally believed of sharing Jesus, because everybody can play Wiffleball. You can be 2 years old, you can be 100 years old, you can play and nobody can get hurt. It's literally baseball. It's literally Wiffleball, like what it's called. And the idea is you create a place where you come together as a community where everybody can be involved. Everybody can play. Man, we used to put on tournaments in our church. We had 70 and 80-year-old grandma and grandpas playing Wiffleball tournaments with 12-year-old kids because they know they can't get hurt. But it's creating that space that everybody can come to, that everybody's loved, but also in it, they can create that community. They can come together again as a community in a safe space. And I love using Wiffleball. You know that, Andrew, you know that to a fact. That's my favorite. But also, even if it's other, maybe it's soccer balls, I don't know, but it's creating a space for them to have that's safe. Here we are. I look at it this way, they just get hit by a massive tornado. Obviously there's nothing left. So there's got to be a piece of grass somewhere. All you got to do is put 4 pieces of bat and ball, and let's play some ball. Every kid played ball growing up. I don't care who you are. Everybody played it at some point in their life. And just creating that space, like, hey, this is a space that's safe. Come here, let's just hang out. And it has nothing to do with me. We're gonna maybe set up a wiffle ball field, but it doesn't mean we're gonna preach the gospel to you. We're just gonna love you. We're gonna earn. We're gonna be a part of who you are. We want to show you that unconditional love.
And so now the big question is what, because like you said, you're in the planning stages. Well, you're past planning stages. You're in the more of the secondary planning stages.
Yeah, let's get the paperwork together.
What is it that you need from people right now to be able to get moving? Are you looking for volunteers? Are you looking for financing? Are you looking for prayers? Are you looking for sponsors? What is it that you need right now?
Always, first and foremost is prayer. this is a huge undertaking. Like we did the 5,000 meals in one day. I was so tired after that day. I was like, I don't ever want to do this again. But then it was like, okay, no, this is what God's calling me to do next. And if it's for me doing it for a few years or what it is, but for right now, this is like you talk about that transition window, and this is where I'm at. And I truly believe this is what God is calling for me in this transition time, is to do this and to travel, and like this is where we're going. And I think for me, it starts always with prayer. Prayer is the most important. Everybody knows that, and like, okay, God, but yeah, it's the financial support. I don't want to get grants, but I don't want to go into a town and have a kid walk up or an adult walk up and says, I don't have any, I'm hungry and I run out of food. I don't want to run out of food when I go into a town. And it's a huge financial, it's like trying to find the money to get the equipment all up front that I need. Like right now, I'm in the point like, okay, yes, I want to start the 501c3 so I can at least get the money in to cover the trailer, just because it takes 9 months for them guys to build a trailer. So, I mean, we're already September. So it means it's the middle of June next year. I'm sure when they know what's going on, George does, he might make it a little quicker, but it's a 6 to 8 months to get the trailers built, get it made, get it. And, and it's just getting the equipment right now. And eventually it's going to be, I need the volunteers. Hey, here we come. Like, Andrew, I'm coming to Ohio. You better find me an army. We're going to go to this town that just got hit, and let's reach out and get people. Or, but it's right now, it's literally the prayers and getting the finances coming in. And I got to get the 501c3. So if you know a lawyer or an accountant, that'd be awesome too. I mean, I think I have one figured out here, but I mean, but the other hard part is because it's a disaster team, it's multiple states. Like, yes, I got to set it up here, but I also have to go talk to other states too. And it's just finding the time. Like, the hard part is I have a full-time job and I want to do this full-time, but until I get finances in, I can't just, like, it's getting to that point. Like, yes, I want to cover where I'm fully, like, part of it is, yes, it'll fund me as a full-time job, because it's ministry, because it'll be full-time for me, fundraising and disaster relief and travel. And there's a ton of travel in it for me, because I've already gotten some sponsorships starting to come in for it, like charcoal. I teamed up with Firebull Charcoal out of Florida. They are like all in for the charcoal that I need, but it's just that financial beginnings to, okay, let's go, because because I'm telling you right now, a tornado is going to hit somewhere tomorrow. There's going to be a tornado the next day. There's going to be a flood. It never stops. So it's the sooner I get money in the bank for this, the sooner I can really get going, and starting to pray for the right people. Like, I'm going to have to hire a couple of chefs and a couple of people, because I can't just do all the cooking myself, but it's also just praying that God starts putting everything in place. He's going to open and close every door that needs to be opened and closed. Yes, I'm accepting his call to go do this. But now, the argument with God, okay, God, it's your turn. What do you got? But I'm not going to be the first one. I'm not going to put God in a box. If God says, here you go, this is going to blow up like there's no tomorrow. But also, I don't want to be so big that it's still not, I can't be a part of it. Because I still want to go to every town and cook with the crew, even though does that make sense? Like, I want to be just as big a deal in it as going like, hey, I want to be a part of it. Hey, let's go into this town. Let's support people. That's my heart, is giving the people the support. It's not sitting in an office. That's not me. You know that. That's why I do youth and sports ministry. I don't want to sit still. I hate being inside. So, but it's the idea right now. It's figuring out prayer and figuring out where the finances are coming. Like, I'm literally trying to budget it with probably $2.5 million a year start is where I'm looking. But I got to find it. I don't want to do US. I don't want to do grants. I don't want the government to hold it against me. I have the training. I am in the, I'm at the place where I can, like, I have it all laid out on paper, what each thing costs already, it's just trying to figure it out. And then the other thing is event. And, that's just the first phase. There's 2 other phases coming, which we don't have time to talk about right now, but there's 2 more phases in the whole.
I'm sure you'll be back.
Yes. But the first phase is getting going, is getting the first, I know it's a big number. I'm just saying 3 million. It's a huge number. It's astronomical in my head, but to do it correctly, that's where it's at. And then if we have money left, because $1 million alone of it is food for that's just 5-6 months of feeding a town of 500 to 1,000 people. You're looking at $1 million in food for 5-6 months. We'll put that into perspective. You're just like, holy crap, like, oh my gosh, I need $1 million just to buy. Like, I think about every Sam's Club I'm going to walk into and have to write checks for $10,000 to $15,000 every day. But you want to, and a part of it is like Mercy Chefs. I love their ideas. You want to have color. I want people to open that box and know it's not just a cheap meal. It has to be nourishing. It has to be like, I want to eat it. Like I want to go, oh my gosh, this is a really good meal. I'm going to eat this whole thing, and creating what all that looks like. And you can't do that with garbage food. I want to give people the best meal I can feed them. So that's where I'm at. It's just right now, it's like, okay, God, I need $3 million as soon as possible so I can, order the trailer, order a new truck, order a refrigerator truck, get a building, because I'm going to need a warehouse. And it's possibly, if it gets big enough, I need warehouses and kitchens in 3 different states. Then teaming up with churches. Okay, I'm going to come into your town. Who's got the biggest kitchen of a church that we can stay at? Where's the closest hotels? Because I know everybody's like, hotels. I'm like, yes, I want to put my people that are working for me in a hotel. One, I don't have to feed them breakfast. They get a warm meal for breakfast, but also they get a good bed to sleep in. They have the energy every day to do this every day, because we're going to see people in their lowest of lows. And you have to be able to be like, okay, these people have lost everything. We need, in their sadness, we're that light. We're that beacon of light that's been lit to be like, hey, let's put a smile back on their face. Let's get a warm meal in their belly.
And that last part is something that is, again, something that people don't realize until they've had to do it. That it takes a certain type of person to be able to deal with these sort of situations. Mm-hmm. In many cases, it is actually something that we would even be able to classify as it's a spiritual gifting to be able to do it.
Right.
But it's one that takes its toll. Just like we talked about at the beginning with the burnout, this is another area where burnout can happen if you are not properly taking care of yourself.
Right. And that's part of it too.
And
for
so
me, go ahead.
I was going to say, how can people get in touch with you if they want to be able to either follow along, or they know of somebody in some of these states that you're looking to get into, churches that want to get involved, things like that? How can people get a hold of you?
So right now you can just get a hold of me through my email. Right now, because we're still in the process of getting everything ready. I'm going to try to hopefully have a website start getting built in the next couple of weeks. You can follow me, because I do barbecue stuff, on Instagram and Facebook at Crackling Coals. I mean, it's hashtag Crackling Coals. That's my barbecue company. And like everything's going to be like, it's going to be feed his flock, and a ministry outreach of Crackling Coals. So, I mean, it's hashtag Crackling Coals. That's my Instagram, where you can look up Crackling Coals. You can look me up. There's ways to find me. You can email me. You can call me. I mean, that's just it right now. It's just, I don't care. I just need prayers. And it's just the support. Like, hey, I'm having for me, like, holy crap, I'm running this multi-million-dollar ministry. I need a break. I need somebody to just vent with, have the right people to talk to. But also, it's creating a team that's also supportive of my staff and whoever I take. And, it's just, but and if somebody wants to volunteer when we get to a town, heck yeah, let's go. Like, I can't say, and knowing now, like, I can't say yes to every town. Yes, tornadoes hit everywhere. I need people to pray that God gives me the right towns to go to. Does that make sense? Okay, Jamie, you're going here. I know this feeling, like everybody's going, oh, we hit it. Okay, God, I need to be able to decipher where we're going and be okay with that. Because I want to go in every town there is. Because that's who my heart is.
Which again, that's another one of those areas where the idea of having to say no
is hard.
Especially for people like you and I.
Right. No doesn't exist in my book.
Yes. Now, he gave you a bunch of different places you can find him. You can find all of those in his guest portal on our website as well. And we'll be doing updates and things like that to be able to find out about all of that. So for the CSRM people, if you go to ministrymisfits.org, wow, I just screwed that up.
It's okay.
If you go to ministrymisfits.com and go to the resources tab, and under the resources, you click on guests, and then you just find Jamie, which he should be towards the top since he's a B, but you should be able to find him. And then if you click on his portal, then it will bring up all the links to his different stuff there. MrMisfits.com. Do what?
You can add my phone numbers to that list too. I mean, I'm easy to get along with.
Sounds good to me. So yeah, you'll be able to find all of that on the website here pretty soon. And then we will definitely be keeping everybody updated as this moves forward. And looking to get this off the ground and everything like that. So, in the meantime, though, Misfit wise, if you want to support the show, you can do so by going to patreon.com/MrMisfits. there you can get all sorts of different stuff, from the Patreon exclusive Bible studies to some of the episodes releasing early, to early access to the blogs, as well as some exclusive merchandise, things like that. So patreon.com/ministry misfits. Jamie, thank you for doing this, for getting up early. I
needed it. I needed to see your face.
Yes, you're one of the few that actually says that genuinely. So I'm sure you'll be back. We'll be keeping everybody up to date on what's going on, and we will see the rest of you next week.
The Ministry Misfits podcast is a production of Ministry Misfit Media in association with Overwhelming Victory. Dr. Greg Linville and Andrew Fouts are our executive producers, and Brandon Simmons is associate producer. The Ministry Misfits theme song is written and produced by J.D. Laird and Laird Creative Agency. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email us at ministrymisfitmedia@gmail.com or by following @ministrymisfit on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also visit our website at www.ministrymisfits.com or through bio.link/ministrymisfits. If you would like to support Ministry Misfits, you can become a patron by going to patreon.com/ministry misfits.